and welcome. I'm happy to see all of you here. And my name is Irina Ryshkova, and this is our next NAP. NAP stands for Nonprofit Auditor Points, and I'm your nonprofit auditor. I designed these NAPs to give some information to nonprofit community about some commonly asked questions. Hopefully you will find this video useful. Today, I do want to talk to you about functional expenses. And main reason for discussing this area, because that's the most important area for nonprofit organizations. That's area where a lot of your funders, donors, and readers of financial statements look at the numbers. And these numbers can tell a story, very important story. So let's see what that means. It means that nonprofits in the United States allocate all the expenses in three main functions: program, general and management, or management administrative, sometimes it's called, and fundraising. So very critical for nonprofit to understand that the statement of functional expenses, that allocation, indicates how nonprofit uses its own resources, where that money goes to program, to management, or to fundraising. And that information is reported on your annual tax return, Form 990, so anybody in public can see it. Form 990 is publicly available. That information is also will go to your audited, reviewed, or compiled financial statements. And also a lot of funders can just ask you for the statement of functional expenses. The main thing before nonprofits gonna start allocating, nonprofits needs to remember what definitions of program services, management in general, and fundraising. Program, it's expense that goes directly to the mission of the organization, exactly for what that organization exists to do. Management in general, it's behind the scene. We also call it supporting expenses. It can be accounting, human resource, board meetings, IT, legal, and so forth. Fundraising, that's very important. Fundraising activities are necessary, and they aim to engage donors, talk to donors, includes grant writing, communication, fundraising events. Those are examples of fundraising. So there is no one recipe to fit all nonprofits. For example, if nonprofit provides accounting services, this is their mission. For example, I will organize the nonprofit that provides accounting for startup businesses. And part of that support, we will do accounting services. That would be our program activity. However, for majority of nonprofits that not accounting firms, the accounting services cannot be program services. Even if the funder requires provide accounting how money was spent on a grant, it's still not program expenses. It's supportive expenses. Okay, so let's go over a few examples so you understand how to allocate funds. For example, if employee running after school program, and that's all she does, or therefore it's 100% program, right? If the employee helps with fundraising event, that time need to be allocated to fundraising. Office rent. Sometimes nonprofits allocate 100% to admin or 100% to administrative. Both ways most likely incorrect, because within nonprofit, most nonprofits have employees who have office that do program work, and some office they have admin, and some maybe fundraising. It needs to be allocated, reasonably allocated. Allocation needs to be reasonable and consistent. If nonprofit pick up a methodology, you need to stick to that methodology and apply it consistently so it can be comparable between various functions and between years. Executive director salary. Most likely, executive director works at least in two functions. Sometimes executive director can work in all three functions, including program, management, and general fundraising. Therefore, the best way to allocate payroll for executive director would be timesheets. Again, nonprofit does not need to go over each timesheet and come up with a percentage, annual percentage. It can be done on estimated level. You can do assessment of 1 year percentage and assume that the rest of the year was about the same, or you can just assess 1 week each month and also project it for overall year, or executive director can come up with a memo of analyzing time during the year and saying, I spent X percentage for program, X for fundraising, and X for admin. Again, allocation methods. So we as auditors, we often see that sometimes nonprofits go to simple percentage allocation across all accounts, not a good method. Other methods, nonprofits very often would like to make their program expenses better, and they start allocating expenses that clearly do not belong to the program. So therefore, it's better to allocate. Better, first of all, identify shared expenses that not clearly 100% program or 100% admin. So for example, that's payroll and payroll related. Please do not forget, if you're allocating payroll, you need to allocate payroll tax and benefits the same way. One common mistake, workers' compensation. Workers' compensation, it's insurance. Insurance cannot be program expenses. And then nonprofits need to look at each line item in their general ledger by accounts and see, is this expense is program, admin, or fundraising. You can use allocation memos that needs to be verified and approved by board, hopefully, time logs, whatever nonprofit will come up with. It needs to be reasonable and consistent. Document and file in a folder. So this way, your nonprofit will be bulletproof for the audit from the IRS, from the funders, from the regular financial audits, or for the Form 990, because you will have a robust methodology. And typically, nobody will argue with methodology unless it's specifically wrong on its face. And after methodology is developed, nonprofits need to realize how it will be tracking allocation, where it's going to happen. So it can happen directly in your accounting software. A lot of software uses classes, projects, any other features that allow to allocate expenses by functions. If not, you can also do that in the Excel. You can do allocation. I would not advise to do allocation annually only, because this way you as a nonprofit might be subject to unexpected surprise, which might not have been your intent. But if you truly correctly allocate your expenses, your program might be unreasonably high or unreasonably low, depends on what the goals are for your fundraising, for reporting to the donor, and so forth. And you might have a temptation to start playing with the allocation. So I would advise to have quarterly allocation and see how you're meeting your expectations, your projected percentage, if you have any expectations to allocations, and then see if you need to increase your program expenses or increase your fundraising expenses, whatever nonprofit goals for that year. Therefore, just to conclude, please pay attention as a nonprofit to the methodology allocation for statement of functional expenses, because this is one of the most analyzed financial statement by every user, by donors, by funders, by government entities, and even by your board. So therefore, please pay attention to allocation, revise it often, at least annually, allocate at least quarterly to make sure that you meet your expectations. And remember, your allocation of functional expenses tell the story to the reader. It is expected to have a larger fundraising expenses if your nonprofit go through some expansion or capital project and would like to engage more donors, or if your nonprofit is very robust and funded by government entities, maybe it's expected to have less overhead, meaning less supportive expenses and more program expenses. And please do not confuse overhead expenses with the management in general and fundraising. Very often in government grants, you will see words overhead expenses. And very often government grants will just allow you to assign 10% of expenses. But that not necessarily means that they are program or admin or fundraising. They're different terminology that not related to functional expenses allocations. Therefore, just to give you a couple more examples, I have a notes here, let me check. What the most common mistakes we see in a statement of functional expenses. Like I mentioned before, organization puts 100% of office rent on the program. Typically, it's wrong, right on the face. Executive director salary is coded directly to the program. In explanations, nonprofits think, hey, ED is leading our organization, she's leading our mission. Of course it's a program. No, it's not. Development director salary charged to the program because they closely work with the program staff. That's not correct. Most likely it's admin or fundraising. IT support and audit expenses and accounting expenses, they cannot be program expenses. They are purely example of administrative expenses. Volunteer appreciation event. A volunteer thank you event is charged to fundraising because it's external relation. If the volunteer is part of the program, for example, tutoring, then and it was part of that program, that can go directly to the program. It can be split. Printing and supplies, it all goes directly to the program without the thinking, and that's not right. Sometimes printing can be fundraising if it's used for annual report printing, or it could be for admin if that was printing for the board of directors packages, right? Or if you school and you're printing curriculum, that would be program expenses. So you do need to understand what expense was for, right? And a strategic consultant is classified to 100% of admin. If the job as consultant is to help nonprofit to develop future mission, to engage more community in operations, it cannot be program. That probably most likely needs to be split between fundraising, maybe program, and maybe program. So that was the main points about statement of functional expenses. Please develop methodology, review it annually, and have fun allocating, because statement of functional expenses will tell story to the readers of your financials. Thank you so much. Let me know if you enjoyed the video, and I will looking forward to see you for the next nap. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe.